Edward's cybernetic hand trembled as he read the message again on his neural interface. The words appeared in broken standard, translated from the Draconid language by the ship's outdated AI. He hadn't heard from anyone on Kepler 442b in 3 years, not since the war ended and the colonial treaties were signed. "Mommy Dragon is sick, but she'll smile if you come." The message was tagged with coordinates he recognized immediately. Settlement 7, the neutral zone where human veterans and Draconid refugees had attempted an impossible experiment in coexistence. Edward had spent 2 years there during the ceasefire, working as a xenobiological consultant. That's where he'd met Sira, the being humans called a dragon due to her species' reptilian features and bioluminescent scales that resembled ancient Earth mythology. And Jenny, the little one, Sira's offspring. Edward stood in the cargo bay of his mining vessel, surrounded by asteroid fragments containing rare Earth elements. The haul would set him up for a year, but the message pulsed in his vision like a second heartbeat. He activated the long-range scanner and plotted a jump to Kepler 442b. 6 weeks through fold space, 6 weeks of wondering what sick meant for a species whose biology was still largely mysterious to human medicine. The approach to Settlement 7 triggered memories Edward had carefully suppressed. The biodomes gleamed against the planet's purple-tinged atmosphere, a testament to human engineering adapted for Draconid environmental needs. The war had been fought over this planet's uranium deposits, but now it served as a symbol, however fragile, of reconciliation. Edward's ship received clearance, and he landed at the civilian port. The moment he stepped onto the platform, he saw her. Jenny was no longer the small creature he remembered. At 7 years old, equivalent to a human 12-year-old in development, she had grown to nearly 2 meters tall. Her scales had deepened from pale jade to a rich emerald, and the bioluminescent patterns along her spine pulsed with what his xenobiology training recognized as emotional distress. "Edward Human," she said, her vocal cords producing the clicked consonants that her species mixed with vocalizations. "You came. I came as fast as I could, Jenny. What's wrong with Sira?" Jenny's secondary eyelids flickered, the Draconid equivalent of tears. "Radiation sickness. From the war. From before." Edward's stomach dropped. During the war, both sides had used tactical nuclear weapons in the disputed territories. Sira had been a civilian caught in a bombardment zone. He'd found her in the ruins of her settlement, barely alive, and had used his military authority to get her to a human medical facility. It was an act that nearly cost him his commission, but the ceasefire came 3 days later, rendering his insubordination moot. "Show me," Edward said. Sira lay in a specialized medical chamber filled with the ammonia-nitrogen atmosphere her species required. Through the transparent polymer, Edward could see the deterioration. Her scales, once brilliant as gemstones, had dulled to gray. The bioluminescent patterns that indicated health and mood were barely visible. Dr. Patel, the settlement's chief physician, pulled up holographic scans. "The radiation damage was dormant for years. We didn't have the technology to detect it during the war. Now it's metastasized through her lymphatic equivalent system. Human treatments won't work. Our cellular repair nanotech is incompatible with Draconid biology." "What about Draconid medicine?" Edward asked. Patel shook his head. "Their homeworld was destroyed in the war. Most of their medical knowledge died with it. We're working with fragments, folklore, and desperate experimentation." Jenny pressed her face against the chamber, her small clawed hand against the polymer. Inside, Sira's eye opened, the vertical pupil focusing on her daughter, then shifting to see Edward. Her facial muscles contracted in what Edward had learned was a Draconid smile. Through the chamber's speaker, Sira's voice came weakly. "The veteran returns. Jenny said you would come. I'm here, Edward said, his cybernetic hand flat against the chamber beside Jenny's. What do you need? Your genetic code, Dr. Patel interjected. It's radical, possibly insane, but it's all we have. During the war, you received high doses of radiation treatment after the Battle of Titan Ridge. Your body developed unusual resistance markers. If we can adapt your cellular repair mechanisms with draconid genetic material— It's experimental, Syra interrupted. Risk to you. Might not work. Edward didn't hesitate. Do it. The procedure took 18 hours. Edward lay in an adjacent chamber while nanoscale machines extracted his genetic material, specifically the mutation sequences that had allowed his cells to resist and repair radiation damage. Dr. Patel's team worked with a draconid medical technician, one of only 5 who had survived the war with their training intact, to create a hybrid treatment protocol. The theory was simple but untested. Use Edward's resistance mechanisms as a template, rewrite them into a form compatible with draconid cellular biology, and introduce them through a targeted viral vector. The practice was agonizing. Edward's neural interface filled with warnings as his body fought against the extraction process. But he thought of Syra pulling Jenny from the rubble of their home. He thought of the little dragon girl who had taught him to pronounce her mother's name correctly, who had shown him how draconids measured time by the light of their bioluminescence rather than arbitrary planetary rotations. When Edward woke, Jenny was beside his chamber. Mommy's patterns are glowing again, she said, her own scales brightening with hope. Dr. Patel says the treatment is working. Your cells are teaching her cells how to fix themselves. Through the observation window, Edward could see Syra's chamber. The bioluminescent patterns along her spine pulsed with renewed vigor, not yet healthy but no longer dying. Will she be okay? Jenny asked, the universal question of every child watching a parent suffer. Yes, Edward said, and for the first time in years he believed in the possibility of healing, not just for Syra, but for everyone the war had broken. She's going to smile again? Jenny's scales flickered through colors Edward had never seen before, the draconid expression of joy mixed with gratitude. She carefully placed her hand over his. Your family, she said simply. That's what Mommy says. Not human, not draconid, just family. Edward closed his eyes and felt something unfamiliar in his chest, something that felt like coming home after a long war. Yeah, he whispered. Family. Outside the medical facility, Kepler 442b's twin moons rose over the settlement, where 2 species were learning that survival might mean becoming something neither had been before: unified.